Hello and welcome to another episode of Fully Charged, coming to you from an amazing pub. The pub is called Caffeine and Machine. It's just outside Stratford-on-Avon, and it's a kind of epicentre of where people drive from all over the country in their fabulous classic cars that go vroom, all those noises that they absolutely love. Massively inefficient, but enormous fun. And I've come here in this. This is the Audi e-tron Sportback 55 Quattro. It's an amazing car. So this is the Audi e-tron, that is Caffeine and Machine, and this is Fully Charged. So this car I've been driving now for a few days, which is always great. Rather than having like the 1 or 2 hour test drive, having it for a little bit longer is an enormous privilege. And of course, it's a spectacularly luxurious, powerful, executive class, big, underline big, luxury SUV Sportback. It's got the sloping roof, so it's not your standard big box SUV, it's a slightly more sporty version. And it's got all the things that you could possibly want. The technology is definitely next generation. The technology I'm looking at here, the way that this car understands the road, understands you as a driver, helps you but doesn't take over. All that stuff is remarkable, incredibly complex and very expensive technology. So I'm just going to go over a quick few things about the charging and all that stuff, because that's intriguing. So it has the power. It's all-wheel drive, obviously. It's 2 motors. It's 300 kilowatts or 402 horsepower, which means even though it's a 2.5-ton car, it does accelerate fairly impressively. The charging is interesting, so it can charge at 11 kilowatts from a home charger. If you've got that thing, that's how you access the charger. I remember when I first saw that, I like that. There's nothing sticking out. It's very discreet. It's very quiet. Let's see if I can even hear. There's got to be little servo motors in here. Ooh. Nice, I like that. Massive brakes, massive, a little bit catchy, I found them, but they are impressive. One of the most incredible things about this car is the headlights, and it's really beyond my technical cognition to even describe them. They are matrix LED lasery headlights. They can actually project images on the road in front of you. Now, I have driven it at night, but only in country lanes. I haven't driven on motorways because it lights up just your lane. It's the most extraordinary technology. Hugely complicated and probably very expensive, particularly if you have a little prang and smash those lights. Took me a while to work this out. It wasn't immediately intuitive how you open the bonnet. So there you go. So I looked under there and went, oh, there isn't any storage in the front. What a shame. There's just mechanical bits and pieces and wiring and stuff like that. And then until I worked out, oh, there. And that's your storage. So that is a big bag of cabling. That's all the cables you could possibly want that come with the car. Lots and lots of different size connectors. That's an old Commando connector, 5-pin Commando, God, all sorts of things. But then Type 2s, 3-pin plugs. Really comes with the full kit. When you get an Audi, you get everything thrown in, but not a massive amount of storage, to be honest. But that's a useful place to keep that underneath there. So this car has a 95 kilowatt hour battery, but it has a range of genuinely, because I've been driving it and keeping an eye on it, genuinely around the 200, maybe 220 miles range, if you're lucky. That isn't very good. There's other cars that have that size battery that do around 300 and a realistic 280. This one does 220, 230. You know, it is a heavy car that uses a lot of electricity. It's using double what the Kona can use on the same journey on a day like this at temperatures like this. Literally twice as much electricity per mile as the Kona uses. You know, and the Kona is not this big, it's not this luxurious, it doesn't have this much technology, but it does the same thing. It takes you from A to B, and it uses less energy to do it, and that's kind of hard to love. Now, this would outperform the Kona. It's faster, it's four-wheel drive, it's grippy, it's got an amazing, you know, performance and handling and all those sort of things. But I can't help feeling like I'm basically driving a 1980s Range Rover that does 7 miles to the gallon. The back, I mean, this is a huge, roomy car. And I've saved this up because I haven't got in the back before, so I don't really know what this is like. But I'll get in the back now. Oh my God, okay. Okay, if you had to have a ride in the back, you wouldn't be depressed. But this is where the big ethics question comes in about cars like this. And this is a kind of, if this car feels like the technology that underlies it is brilliant, but it is cursed by the legacy automaker's mindset. Why do we need a car this big? Why do human beings in the 2020s need to spend the best part of £85,000 for a vehicle that, no matter what your usage is not going to be above 10% of its lifespan will you be using it. But more like 5%, and in some cases less than that. Cars like this, all cars other than commercially used ones, so taxis, ambulances, police cars, things like that, they're used more. Vehicles like this, privately owned vehicles like this, are used 3, 4, 5% of their lifetime. They're in use. The rest of the time they're just sitting there idly, doing nothing. That is like being a multi-billionaire with multiple houses all over the world that you spend 1 or 2 days in a year. And it's incredible indulgence. And it just somehow makes less and less sense the more and more I think about the way we move around and the way we use cars. The boot, the trunk. Of course, it's all automatic. It's a posh Audi. It's an executive Audi. Huge amount of space in there. And then when you lift this up, even more huge. So there's a hang on, I'll just unhook that from there. I love that, and I'll talk about that net in a minute because I really like that. But in there, another massive amount of space, and there is room for a spare wheel. This one hasn't got a spare wheel, but there's actually room for one. So loads and loads of space in there. You could really put a lot of stuff in that. And then obviously if you put the seats down, it's massive. We will put the amount of litres in a lower third, because I haven't written that down, but it's a lot of litres. It's basically a small swimming pool scale of litres. But this, I do like. Other cars come with this. This isn't unique to Audi by any means. But there's a net thing that you hook. And I put my shopping in there and it doesn't all fly about. That was wonderful. Authorising, yes. That is how easy it is to charge an Audi e-tron Sportback 55 Quattro. I think I've still forgotten something. So while I'm driving really slowly through this traffic on the outskirts of Stratford-upon-Avon, the home of William Shakespeare, it'll give me a chance to think about this. So it's a performance SUV. It's 5.7 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, roughly. Which is very impressive. I have to say that being used to driving, I guess fast electric cars, my Tesla Model 3 is probably as quick, if not a tiny bit quicker, and there certainly are plenty of electric cars that are much faster than that, but it's still in that ballpark range of, surprisingly quick. 300 kilowatt or 300 kilowatt motors or 402 horsepower combined with the two motors front and rear, obviously all-wheel drive. No gears. For those of you who don't know about this thing, it's got forward and reverse. That's all it has. Very, very, very easy to drive. Instantly you get in it. 99% of it is absolutely intuitive. I did find that stuff really encouraging. I've often moaned about the human-machine interface and the lack of inspiration therein. And in this case, it is really, really slickly done. Very, very intuitive, very easy to use. So the dash cluster screen here, I really like. It's very seconds of getting in the car, I could understand it. So you can go through various things. So that's Apple CarPlay, that's the map. So you can have the map there, which I've used quite a lot. That's very useful. And then it gives you a few settings to do with your range. So as you can see, I've just driven 78 miles and I've managed 2.9 miles to the kilowatt hour, which is really good. Took me 2 hours and 33 minutes, and I've averaged 31 breathtaking miles an hour. But then you can see the total, that's the range now. I've got 102 miles left. That's the date and time. But then you go back down that way, and this is, since I've had the car, I've driven 167 miles, and I've managed 2.8. Well, I have driven really, really carefully to get 2.8 miles to the kilowatt hour. You would have to thrash my Tesla. Okay, the Tesla is a smaller, lighter car, but I would have to thrash it to get it that low. So that, I'm not impressed. That's the driver's assistance thing, which I haven't. Saying that tells you, if you have it on, that tells you your speed limit, which is quite useful. That's it, basically. The drag coefficient on this car is 0.25. I mean, it just keeps sliding along. It just doesn't seem to slow down. It is, and I've not got my foot on the throttle. I haven't had my foot on the accelerator now for, I don't know what, the last half mile. Slight downhill bit. It just keeps going. Now I've got to giving it a bit of push. But even with all that effort and faffing about that I've been doing, I'm still only getting, like now, 2.8 miles to the kilowatt hour. That is not very far on a kilowatt hour of electricity. If you've paid 5p a kilowatt hour at night charging this car, then you're spending 10, 11 pence, 12 pence to go 2.8 miles. Okay, it's not that much. If you're in a petrol car, you'd spend 55, 60, 70p to do the same distance. So when I got in the car this morning, it said 182 miles range. It wasn't full. I'd driven it yesterday and I hadn't bothered to charge it overnight. I didn't think I needed it. So today I've driven 93 miles now, and I've got 89 miles left. And if my mathematics serves me right, that is 182. That is quite freakish. That tells me that the mileage guesstimate is very, very accurate. And that is quite unusual with electric cars. It vastly overestimates how much range you've got, and then you drive it and you watch it drop, drop, drop. My first generation Nissan Leaf, you can start driving, it says 87 miles, you drive it a mile and it says 70. You drive it 5 miles, it says 68. You know, it really falls off a cliff. It's putting 50 kilowatts in, so it's putting the maximum it can put in. This car can take 150 kilowatts of charger. So if the charger was capable of doing that, and I was looking for a charger around here that did, you know, over 200 kilowatts, there aren't any. So as you can see from this, I've had to come closer than I was comfortable with. Every beeper in the car was going bananas. You had to get this close to be able to have this reach, and it's pretty much at the maximum. I couldn't get much further back. I'm slightly over into my neighbour's car park. If they come back and want to get in their car, they're probably going to get in through the back because they can't get in the driver's door. It's too close. But my big tank is charging, and that's what's important. I really want to underline this argument, because you could also buy a very expensive Audi diesel, or you could buy a very expensive Audi petrol SUV of a similar size. The Q8 is a similar size. It's big luxury upper posh class car. And if you did that, if you now don't need to do that. I can't. If you're watching this toying with possibly one day buying an electric car, and you might go, oh no, I don't think I can cope with the change. I'll stick with the massive petrol or diesel one. Please have a test drive of this. This car is much, much better than any of the petrol or diesel cars that Audi make, any of them, but particularly the big SUVs. It's much better. It's a much nicer car to drive. A thing that I'm not convinced by. I completely understand the drive to make this technology work, and I think it's important, but I don't think it's quite there yet. So that is the wing cameras, because they're not mirrors. So out of that door is a wing camera. and that is showing the image of what's behind me on this screen down here. That is really difficult to use, this side. That side, I've got no problem. I glance over there, I can see immediately there's a red car behind me at a safe distance. I can tell that, and then I check in that mirror there and I can see that. And I'm not like searching for it. Over here, what I'm constantly doing, I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing a camera. I can't see what's behind me. Oh, then I look down there and it's kind of in an awkward position. I'd like it here. I don't know what, I'd like it there. It's just the wrong place. It's just in the wrong place for me. And I've got used to it, but I still glance out there because it's so automatic when you're driving. I've been doing it for decades and decades. You glance out the window and see what's behind you. Glance out the window. You do it all the time when you're driving. It's unconscious. Now I just glance there to look what's that way. I saw it straight away. No problem. Passenger side, brilliant. Driver's side, very problematic. The Honda E also has this system, and when I drove the Honda E for the shortest time possible, I was really impressed with how the wing cameras worked. They just looked right. It just felt right. It felt like it was doing the right job, and I could tell where to look. I wasn't sort of glancing around trying to find it. The car stuff, often on electric cars, you get an enormous amount of stuff about the car details and stuff like that. That's basically all there is. I can see there's 97 miles range. With climate control on, if I turned that off, I'd add 6 miles to it, you know. So it doesn't really tell me a great deal. Charging and efficiency, efficiency assist, automatic, manual, recuperation, automatic is really good. I like that. So there are some things there. Yeah, not a huge amount of information. Certainly not when you're driving along. You know, there's not. But a great driving assist, that's very good. So the haptic feedback I find really useful. So you actually, you have to press it quite, if I just touch it, it doesn't do anything. But if I press it and it goes click and you feel it move, it's that weird thing where it gives you a little bit of feedback. That is very useful. And that's very easy to see what you're doing there. It's nice and big and clear, so that's really good. Yeah, it really does compare to vehicles like the Mercedes EQC, the Jaguar I-Pace, the Tesla Model X, and of course the Audi e-tron, just the first one that came out, the SUV. It is more expensive than the standard Audi e-tron. The fastback is more expensive. Everything else is pretty much the same. It is less expensive than the Tesla Model X, £4,000 cheaper, but the Tesla Model X goes a great deal further on essentially the same battery size, which tells you something about the energy efficiency of Teslas. And the Tesla Model X accelerates much faster, has a greater top speed, has more. You know, that is an extraordinary vehicle. I wouldn't want one because it is a massive, great big tank, but this is a massive, great big tank. But I can't wait to see someone like Audi or like BMW or like Volkswagen or like Mercedes to make a simple, kind of analogish, cheaper, smaller, lighter car that uses slightly less electrons to go a mile. I mean, this is 2.5 to 2.8 miles to the kilowatt hour. That's pretty thirsty. That's driving these cars that are around here with massive engines that do 10 miles to the gallon, you know. It's kind of in that ballpark. So that doesn't thrill me. But I've got to drive this home after we finish filming here, and I'm actually looking forward to it. So there's a clue. So that's it, the Audi e-tron. That's all we've got time for. We've had a wonderful time. I want to thank the lovely people at Caffeine and Machine. If you're in the Stratford-on-Avon area and you like classic cars, come here any day of the week, and they've got loads of them. So we had a nice lunch here and sat in the shade. It was very nice, all very, very COVID safe, marvellous. Very, very clever the way they're doing all that. So please do subscribe to Fully Charged. Please do have a look at the YouTube memberships, which are growing and getting more and more interesting as we develop more and more plans, which are taking a bit of time to come through. It's hard work. We're trying to sort all these things out. Listen to the Fully Charged Show podcast, which is really good, and we've got some amazing guests on it. Have a look at the Patreon link, all those normal things. The Patreon link is beneath this video, along with any other information that we may care to share with you. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.